It was strange for Denki Kaminari to be so frank with everyone after his many successes in his career, especially after he had drunk one too many cups of punch. Upon arriving at his old haunting grounds, he parked his car just inside the gates before bumping into Ishido, the both of them arriving at the same time, where Kirishima and Sero were hanging around. A few bits of conversation was tossed around here and there until Bakugo came and went, following after another alumni in the process. Kaminari was thrilled to see his old classmates, buddying up to Jiro upon meeting her, as well as a few other members of his class. Everything was going smoothly, until he helped himself with some of Sato's punch along with Kirishima. He became a bit of a mess.
Sero! Hey!
He called from across the table.
About that text message you sent. Dude, now's not a good time.
Interrupted Sero with a nervous pull of his lips, his eyes darting around the auditorium.
Huh? Okay.
Slovenly agreed Kaminari.
I'll talk to you later. Actually, have you seen Aoyama anywhere? Yeah. I just spoke to him a while ago. He's probably at the... Ah, there he is!
Exclaimed Kaminari with a wave towards the drinks bar.
Hey, Aoyama! Hey!
He immediately stood to his feet, a little flushed before he walked up to the fabulous-looking blonde, spotting his attire still clean and immaculately refined.
Ah, Kaminari!
Greeted Aoyama with a smile.
You look worse for wear. Nah, I'm good.
Reassured Kaminari.
I just wanted to say thank you for your help. I know it was short notice, but your tips and tricks really helped. You mean that very quick phone call about French?
Kaminari nodded slowly while he took another sip of his punch, happily enjoying the night.
I mean, I had them going for a little while, but they beat me fair and square. It's great though. Thank you so much.
Aoyama eyed the drunken blonde, amused and concerned, before he began to wonder about his predicament.
So, where is this villain? Nah, stop calling them that,
reminded Kaminari before he pulled out a small device from his pocket. He pushed the device into Aoyama's face, the screen honing on a location very close to Jim Gamma, beeping repetitively.
They're safe and sound in my car. See?
Slurred Kaminari before he placed the honing device back into the pocket of his pants. Clumsily. Aoyama eyed the blonde in mild disbelief.
They're here? Of course. My job needs me to be near them at all times,
answered Kaminari while he finally pocketed the device.
I can't leave them alone at mine. Well, yes, but they shouldn't stay alone in the car all night,
voiced Aoyama.
Relax. They're cuffed so they can't escape,
reassured Kaminari. A gasp escaped Aoyama's lips upon hearing this predicament, his tone swaying and swooning disappointingly.
But what about the little Shelly?
He questioned.
Sitting in the car while we're having the night of our lives. I can only imagine what they may be thinking, being locked up all alone, unable to do anything.
Kaminari's drunken smile slowly faded after processing Aoyama's words. How long has he been at this reunion now? It may have been a couple of hours, maybe even more. He couldn't tell with all the fun and laughs he joined in, speaking and conversing with his old classmates.
Maybe it's best to invite them here,
suggested Aoyama.
They don't sound as bad as you make them out to be. And besides, as heroes, we have to set an example.
Kaminari's shoulders slumped at Aoyama's suggestion, his eyes staring down at the floor of the auditorium with an embarrassed look crossing his face. He hadn't been the greatest host. More so, the greatest friend, despite the professional stance on his responsibilities.
I should bring them in, huh?
He asked, a little disheartened at his lack of empathy. All Aoyama did was beam a smile. You occupied yourself in the car with a basic beat knocking the door and shaking the cuffs. Night had already fallen outside and the sound of crickets hit your ears, but time felt still that you had no idea how much had passed. An hour or two? There wasn't much to keep you entertained while Kaminari enjoyed his reunion. You could hear the bass of the music play from the car, spotting the lights of the auditorium glow through the canopies of the trees that lined the walkways. You smiled at the rhythm, recognizing earphone jack's music. You sighed while you slumped in the passenger seat, reclining the seat a little to find some comfort despite the cuffs and the ankle brace. You regretted not bringing a book to keep you stimulated. If anything, you didn't sign up to hours of boredom. You blinked out of your bored stupor, spotting the blonde outside of the car, waving cheerfully, yet holding an embarrassed look on his face. It took you back until he walked over to the driver's seat, sitting beside you in the car. It was no surprise to smell the alcohol on him, hitting your senses like a tidal wave.
So,
started Kaminari.
You doing okay?
He was definitely drunk. I'm fine. I've been worse, you replied with a small smile. Just the usual checkup tonight?
Well,
Kaminari's eyes looked away from yours, almost ashamed.
I'm sorry.
Huh? About what?
Leaving you here while I'm inside having the time of my life.
You tried to look into Kaminari's eyes, but he made it difficult. Was this really how he felt? Or was that the alcohol that reeked from him? Learning about the pro hero over the course of his supervision was unpredictable, but watching him now genuinely saddened made you wonder if all of his inhibitions had crumbled. You're just doing your job, you reassured, lifting your cuffs to prove a point. Besides, taking me in a large outing filled with pro heroes and the like would have been a bad idea. Still, Kaminari wallowed. Roi de la fille? Prince Charmant? Shelly?
Stop.
The look on Kaminari's face did not change while he stared off blankly into the car's dashboard. He sat there, silent, succumbing to his emotions about the situation currently playing out.
This is my job, but you're not the job,
he explained, his voice laced with a dash of croakiness.
You're a decent human being and I've left you here like a dog.
Well, I did say that I was happy to just be under house arrest tonight.
You reassured with a wry smile.
That way you could go out and enjoy yourself.
No, that's not it. I brought you along, saying that I needed to keep an eye on you, but really...
Kaminari's eyes continued to cast down on the dashboard, refusing to look you in the eye while he mumbled around with his words and thoughts. You figured he was well drunk. The smell of him didn't deny him of that. But while his eyes rose to meet yours, there was a glint of guilt.
I guess I really wanted a +1 here. But at the last minute, I decided to leave you.
There it was. Uncertainty. Similar to how you saw him back at your capture and how he reacted to the situation. However, the both of you conversed many days and nights now, recalling that impromptu outing to a trivial recreation that was mini putt-putt, and have since learned more about one another. You figured at the very least, his cold feet were brought upon after seeing a friend of his by the academy's gates. A pink-haired, pink-skinned beauty who waved him over. You sighed and hummed in reply, uncertain yourself as to how to respond to this confession of sorts. Reassurance may look like pity. Laughter would definitely make light of his feelings about it, but in the back of your mind you felt oddly sympathetic to his emotions. You almost felt excited that you were within the walls of the illustrious school.
I can take you back to mine,
Kaminari offered while he scrounged for his keys.
I don't want you to be uncomfortable.
Oh no, you interrupted, grabbing hold of his hands.
You are way too inebriated to be driving.
Kaminari only stared at you, dumbfounded, realizing the folly of his suggestion.
Right, well, I can't give you the wheel, and...
Kaminari, why did you come back to the car?
A silence fell between the both of you while you still kept your eyes on Kaminari, the blonde taking a deep breath and attempting to think clearly.
I spoke to a friend, and he suggested inviting you in to join us tonight.
Oh? So the heroes know you have a villain captive by the gates?
You teased in a small jest.
Not only that, but they want to meet you. Not in a scary way, you know, in a good way. Like they want to get to know you. Not like interrogating you, just really meet you, and...
I guess you've been saying good things about me.
You interrupted softly.
Well, as long as you're my chaperon for the night?
Kaminari turned his eyes onto your smiling ones, beaming with a grin, his face still running warm from the alcohol.
Of course! I mean, if you want to.
A soft smile tugged at the corner of your lips, while your hands still held onto Kaminari's throughout this conversation.
I would be honored,
you replied with a slight bow of your head. Immediately in his drunken stupor, Kaminari leapt from his seat and out of his car, running over to your door. Sadly, in a momentary lapse of drunkenness, he had forgotten about your wrists still bound by the door with cuffs, causing Kaminari to immediately, in his hurry, unlatch you from them.
Sorry.
He apologized while he helped you out of his car.
It's all right, Kaminari. I'm okay.
You reassured, finding your feet and soon holding Kaminari up as a support for his clumsy ones. He paid no mind though, allowing you to keep his arm propped against you, ensuring his stability on his weak, drunken legs.
Shall we?
He asked.
Lead the way.
Kaminari shifted while you held onto his arms, propping his weight onto you. Still, he held you, leading his drunken sway from his car down the laneways towards the bright lights of the auditorium. He leaned his head on yours, smelling the alcohol and feeling the flush of his skin on yours. Kaminari had never been this close before, knowing in the back of your mind that his inhibitions were driving him now more than his common sense. You allowed his actions to dictate the trek to the auditorium, until his breath tickled your ear, his words breathless.
I love you.
Your smile disappeared for a moment, still on the walk while he continued on.
And that's the beginning and end of everything.
You sighed with a heavy heart, smirking at his quotability still drunk, and knowing you've been reading The Great Gatsby thrice now. Yet his choice of words only hurt.
May I ask, was this friend of yours your French tutor you mentioned earlier?
You asked, curiously, trying to keep your thoughts at bay. All you received was a nervous chuckle from Kaminari, his grin only captivating you despite the hindsight.
That obvious?
He asked while he clumsily tripped on his feet every once in a while.
Just an educated guess. Shelley.
Hunter Sero smiled up at the large white gates of his academy, memories flooding back in torrents and waves on all of the adventures, and a few mishaps he got himself involved in with his ragtag of friends. After making his way to his old haunting grounds, Sero greeted Kirishima outside Gym Gamma, smart and casual for the evening to begin.
Oh yeah, your date!
Exclaimed Kirishima in mid-conversation.
How did it go? It went pretty alright, actually.
Answered Sero, grinning wryly while he recalled a few points made during his rendezvous in the city's museum.
As long as you feel good about it, there shouldn't be any problems.
Piped Kirishima's partner.
Seeing them again soon? Hey guys!
Sero inwardly sighed in relief hearing Ishido's cry from afar, interrupting the conversation, and soon finding Kaminari along with her setting his mind at ease. Kaminari was the only one amongst the group who had full knowledge of his working relationship with you. Having heard of his work with the Commission and his constant supervision over one of their more villainous assets, Sero thought he could find some advice from the stun gun hero and close friend. That was until the night was underway. With Kaminari and Kirishima drunk from punch, Sero had to unfortunately be the sober one at the reunion, seeing how Bakugo couldn't care less about the current situation. A loose eye around the dance floor ensured Kirishima was taken care of, and soon enough, Kaminari became chatty with old schoolmates, leaving Sero a moment of reprieve for himself. He sighed in exasperation, finally relaxing into his chair, until he spotted something on his dirty plate. It looked awfully familiar.
Salutations, Bucky!
Sero choked on his breath sitting up on his seat, immediately turning his eyes to scan the enormous auditorium, filled to the brim of every student across their year. How on earth did you get inside? He thought, his eyes darting around the room hoping to spot something familiar. Your fur-trimmed clothes, your outfit, even your eyes. He didn't even notice Kaminari approach him from across the table, his arms leaning onto it in a drunken stupor.
Sero! Hey! About that text message you sent. Dude, now's not a good time.
Interrupted Sero anxiously.
Huh? Okay. I'll talk to you later. Actually, have you seen Aoyama anywhere?
Sero's mind was elsewhere. His eyes were focused more so through the crowd, rather than Kaminari's presence whatsoever.
Yeah. I just spoke to him a while ago. He's probably at the... Ah, there he is!
Sero didn't pay any mind to Kaminari's movements or whereabouts. He only managed to notice something move in the distance. Something out of sorts until the flash of eyes met his, disappearing into the crowd. Idle chatter and the cacophony of voices drowned his senses. He could only spot a glimpse of this person, who weaved through the crowd until he emerged finding nobody in the middle of nowhere. Perhaps he was imagining it. Surely, if he walked back to his table, that card wouldn't be there. All a trick of the mind, and probably one too many patrols in the city. He scratched the back of his head, playing with the bristles that tickled his palm without realizing he was still being watched. You stood by the makeshift bar, eyeing the pro hero in the middle of the crowd with a smile. Sneaking into the event was a little troublesome, but nothing like taking out a waiter and disguising as them solved that problem. It was strange to walk around normal. No black eye makeup, no mask, no outfit. Just you. In a waiter's outfit, but truly you. Looking around the auditorium was a sight to behold. Everyone was here, and you couldn't help the coy feeling that bubbled inside, knowing you stood amongst the most prominent heroes to grace Misutafu this day and age. To your estimate, you had eavesdropped on a fair few conversations, finding some boring and others mildly amusing. To your dismay, there had been nothing relative to what you were searching for. Nothing close to the paranormal liberation front. Perhaps a reunion wasn't the right locale to discuss work matters. At least in the company you kept. You started to reset your tray of hors d'oeuvres by the bar, attempting to keep your cover, when a strikingly handsome man stood beside you, helping himself to some already on your tray.
Couldn't wait?
You asked.
But it is just too delectable to wait upon, cher.
He spoke, his flamboyant nature almost lighting up the room. That accent was just...
Are you French?
You asked, earning a dazzling smile from the man.
Oui. Well, I do speak French. Aoyama.
He introduced with a bow. You stared at the man inquisitively, wondering about his mannerisms, his speech, and how he projected himself until...
Nice to meet you.
You started while you set yourself with the tray to serve.
I have a question that you might help me with.
Whatever for?
Asked Aoyama with a flamboyant flair.
You reckon there are better alternatives to Miyokaro? I don't mind, but I think it's cute.
You soon walked into the crowd, leaving Aoyama off guard at least. You merged back into the crowd with a smile on your face, semi-proud of your elusiveness, while you kept an eye on where Sero had disappeared amongst the large body of alumni around the auditorium. It didn't stop you from stealing an hors d'oeuvre or two for yourself until you felt a tug on your shirt.
Hey, been working hard?
The voice was not familiar, and yet it wasn't also at your level, looking down to find a short man beside you. He grinned widely while his eyes looked you up and, well, up.
You know, I could take you behind the scenes of this academy. Show you around?
He spoke with an attempt at temptation. You stifled a chortle that almost burst through your nostrils, only to cover it, clearing your throat. You looked around the room, hoping that ignoring him and his comment may be the solution.
I know all the more romantic spots here.
Or at least you thought.
No thank you, sir.
You spoke as formally as you could.
Really? You're the most gorgeous person I've seen aside from my fellow classmates here.
He continued.
Why, thank you. But I must be going.
You continued your way through the crowds, handing more hors d'oeuvres around only to feel that presence next to you. That short man just didn't quit.
How about we step outside for some fresh air?
He suggested.
Get out of the noise.
I quite like it here, sir.
You rebutted, noticing the tray growing empty until the last hors d'oeuvre was procured through the crowd.
The noise helps me think.
Well then, if you like to be noisy, we could...
You quickly threw the empty tray into the man's face. Not so difficult given how short he was before you teleported yourself across the room, your light bursting momentarily through the air. You hoped the commotion with the tray would keep eyes away from you, appearing on the other side, out of sight. You breathed a sigh of relief. You had never seen persistence to that degree. Still, you couldn't blame the guy for having some good taste, smiling at the thought with a roll of your eyes. You brushed the uniform down from the commotion earlier, when the sound of footsteps caught your ear, spotting a shadow that stretched ahead of you from the fairy lights. Until the tall frame of a jewel-haired man in a white suit exited the party, with phone in hand. He looked distracted, paying attention more to his phone call than to you standing by the doors, until you recognized that it was the one and only Shoto.
There is nothing more you found?
He asked calmly, and yet with a presence that would make your blood run cold. Frozen even, despite the irony in that.
I don't trust them.
He continued on the line.
Has the commission been a little cooperative on their end?
The word caught your ear, perked them in curiosity and interest, while you leaned against the open doors, intently listening in on this one-sided conversation. A sigh was all you heard, hearing the frustration in the hero's voice before his eyes looked up at the night sky, watching the stars sparkle brightly above.
Keep an eye out on anything that's related to Rainmaker at least.
He ordered over the phone.
There's something about him I don't like.
A pause cut through the air, waiting for another piece of the conversation to continue, only to meet the hero's exasperated sigh.
No, it's got nothing to do with my love, alright?
He spat, almost embarrassed over the comment, until the light tone of a laugh could be discerned over his phone.
Send Aizawa my regards.
With that, Todoroki hung up on his phone, turning back into the auditorium before his eyes merely glanced at you, his scar prominent in the light. You stared at awe at the hero, watching his aloof and nonchalant gaze follow you while he walked, only for that expression to soften into a smile, nodding at your presence. Your eyes followed him back inside while he affixed his cuffs on his suit. For someone who had a cold front, he was actually a warm person, you thought, leaning back onto the doors again.
Hate to break it to you, but you seem to be stuck,
spoke a voice beside you, catching you off guard until a smile cracked on your lips.
All right, you caught me fair and square,
you conceded with your arms in the air, turning to face Sero, now by the doors. Sero only stared, seeing you without the get-up, without the makeup, without the added exhaustion from troublesome chases the both of you endured. He just saw you, bare for him to see.
Like what you see?
You piped, almost shyly this time around.
What are you doing here?
He asked, suspicious of your presence.
It's all in the news, and I didn't want to miss seeing all of your friends.
You replied in jest.
The ones who celebrated your birthday, I'd imagine. Besides, it's good to get out and meet new people. And there's nothing worth going after in town anyway.
Sero continued to only stare, lost while he absorbed the most normal facade you wore. His eyes trailed along the outfit, while you chuckled inwardly, feeling the awkwardness in the air.
I'm sorry,
slowly spoke Sero.
It's just... Did you steal that outfit?
No,
you replied in slight offense.
I borrowed it.
Sero eyed you again with a raised brow, assessing your response with suspicion. As he should be. Finding you here amongst his friends was a surprise, but ever since that date, and every other time he encountered you, there was always a catch.
After I knocked the guy out,
you ended, earning a slightly panic-stricken Sero to react intensely momentarily.
But they're fine! I made them comfortable. In a kitchen pantry, but they're not hurt.
Sero sighed exasperatedly at your explanation, giving up in this weak interrogation for your supposed gate crash into the reunion. Soon the tempo of the music changed, turning into a slow and rhythmic sway. Sero turned to spot the dance floor now calmer, filled with those who began to slow dance in the room. It was a magical sight with the fairy lights, almost like graduation returned to the present again.
Don't worry, I'll leave. I've brought too much attention anyway.
You reassured him.
At least let me have one doggy bag to go.
You turned to the pro hero only to find his hand open to you, his torso in a semi-bow while he smiled. It was an odd interaction, one you weren't familiar with.
May I offer this dance before I do?
He asked genially.
You're here now, so you may as well experience prom.
Your confused stare slowly turned into a smile, taking his hand and being pulled into a sway just outside the doors. He was extremely coordinated, no less from the most agile pro-hero you've encountered, but he held you gently in his arms while you instinctively, without thought, laid your head on his chest. Though the crowd inside enjoyed the atmosphere, you enjoyed Sero's company, underneath the night sky, swaying in his arms. A smile crept on your lips. Involuntarily, you'd admit. But the sound of Sero's heartbeat felt calming, the deep thrum engulfing your senses. You felt normal. Sero held your body against his, wondering how this felt so different from every other time he had encountered you outside of this academy. It felt as if you melted into him, allowing him to take the lead this time. Relinquishing control must have been foreign to you. Or so Sero thought, still swaying alone by the doors outside of anyone's prying eyes. The both of you stopped while you held each other in your arms, embracing this feeling the both of you shared in this moment together. You never would have imagined bearing everything you were to this man, staring back into his genuine grin and eyes, silhouetted by the fairy lights behind him. You peeked past him, spying on the crowds that congregated in the auditorium, until a familiar face strode gracefully towards Sero from behind.
Sero, mon ami,
called out Aoyama, his hands waving in the air.
I've been looking for you everywhere.
Sero blinked from the sudden disappearance of your figure, left with only fractals of light before he turned around to greet Aoyama.
Hey, Aoyama,
he replied nervously in acknowledgement.
How goes that thief you were talking about?
Sero's hairs stood on end in panic. Were you spotted with him? Dancing moments ago together? If he were lucky, he would imagine Aoyama commenting about him dancing with the catering staff. A good sign if he did.
Well, they've been elusive,
answered Sero, his eyes darting around the doors hoping to spot you somewhere nearby.
Elusive indeed. I've been thinking about another kind of code name you could tease them with next time you spot them,
motioned Aoyama with a sense of pride.
Huh?
I've been thinking that calling them Miyokaro was too, what's the word, specific. It sounded boring the more I thought about it.
Sero wondered what came about with this conversation, but to his relief, Aoyama showed no inkling of him witnessing you with him moments before he interrupted the moment.
Oh, really?
Slowly asked Sero, suspicious about how this came about.
What other ideas do you— Aoyama!
cooed a voice from outside.
Come meet them, they're awesome!
Sero and Aoyama both turned to find Kaminari still drunk, being led, or leading, his +1 to the door. It looked to be a mess from the both of them, more so because of Kaminari's inebriation. Both men instinctively approached the couple, Sero taking Kaminari, and Aoyama offering his arm to his +1, the villain turned commission's witness. The group, despite the sloppiness in Kaminari's slurred speech, made their ways back to the doors, unaware of them being watched by you, your eyes taking in the scene, but mostly on Sero before he disappeared into the auditorium. You breathed a sigh of relief, lying your body atop the roof of the auditorium, staring up at the stars in the sky twinkling much like the fairy lights inside. Your chest bubbled with laughter, happily taking in that moment with Sero. The warmth of his hands, the sway of his feet, the sight of his smile while he led you step by step. Gatecrashing was worth it. You've experienced prom, even if it was only for that brief moment.
Thanks, Bucky.
It was a long day at the commission's office before you hopped out to make your way to your reunion. Given that you had only recently spoken to Bakugo and Kirishima due to their mission on Nabu Island, you smiled at the thought to see them dressed up for the night, rather than their disheveled, bandaged selves from whatever happened in the quiet town. The thought of the reports were fresh in your mind while you strolled towards the academy. Headshots of the suspect were included as well, seeing his smiling face in frame. Compared to most captives, he wasn't cocky, but it looked genuine despite the photo. Still, interrogations would commence in a few days, seeing that due process was required before any more information could be collated together. You spotted a few familiar faces in the street heading towards the school. Most of them faces from other classes that you recognized until a mop of purple hair caught your eye loitering by the tall white gates. Hitoshi Shinsou was dressed to the nines, prim and proper, but not in that dark purple suit.
Hey!
You called from afar, catching his eye before you reached him by the gates.
Were you waiting long?
Not really.
He answered dryly, stretching his limbs.
I was actually getting comfortable.
I'm just a little disappointed.
You commented with a smirk, catching wind of Shinsou's confused expression.
I was really hoping to see you in that suit again.
Oh, that suit.
He murmured apathetically before he sniggered under his breath, walking up to you lazily before his nose hovered close to yours.
Am I not good enough?
You couldn't help but burst into a giggle with him being so close. An involuntary reaction, you were sure, but it gave him a smile seeing you react the way you did, grabbing hold of your hand while his fingers entwined in yours.
Well, you've proven the suit doesn't make the man.
You quipped happily. You could feel his chuckle close to your ear before he slowly pulled away from you, taking you by the hand back into your academy once more. It felt surreal to walk through the paths again, recalling the times you've seen Shinsou take laps around the dorms during off-hour training. Memories flooded back, watching the new generation of students walking past, whispering under their breaths. It didn't faze you though. You could hear every word they were thinking, smiling at their curious natures.
Did I miss something?
Asked Shinsou beside you.
Not much.
You snarked through your giggles.
Oh, really?
Just heard some good things about you.
You beamed a smile at him, gently caressing his hand with your thumb while you tried to keep his eye on you.
Sounds like you're a role model for the underprivileged. But you also have a fan club.
News of such magnitude caused his shoulders to stiffen. You spotted it despite the flattering suit he wore, only making you chuckle deeper. The look in his eye was a multitude of emotions, ranging from confused, shocked, and utter disappointment. You continued to comfort his hand in yours, still walking past while spotting a group of students whispering, attempting to steal gazes at the both of you making your way to Gym Gamma.
It's hard to ignore.
You concluded, still looking up at Shinsou, who looked away, slightly embarrassed.
Want to know what they're saying?
No,
He interrupted.
I don't need any self-serving praise. I'm here to spend the night with the one person I trust the most. And work needs to be as far away as possible.
You sighed in agreement. Work was becoming a little too close to home, having taken on the case with the assassin and the Tartarus prison break. The trip to Polis Massa Bay yielded very little results despite witness accounts of a trio who fit some description to the members of the prison coup. There were no other sightings during that weekend. Night was on its approach, with the dark blues merging with the last dregs of sunset pinks in the sky. Ahead, you spotted the last of your alumni entering the auditorium, pulling gently on Shinsou's arm to quicken your pace. You weren't extremely late by any means, but seeing that most invitees have already entered made it seem so.
No need to rush, kitten.
Spoke Shinsou, still allowing you to pull him by the arm.
Come on, we can't miss Iida's and Yaoyorozu's welcoming speech.
You advised.
Is that the highlight of your night?
No, but it'll make for great vocabulary building.
Shinsou sighed at your rationale but can only smile at your fervent need to join the others inside. It wasn't often either of you would surround yourself with many friends, whether it was work or just general bad timing. To him, he still couldn't fathom the idea of calling the others friends, but a slip of the tongue here and there had seeped into his own vocabulary, only caught by your ear. He took a deep breath before the both of you reached the doors to the auditorium, filled to the brim of all the students of their graduating year, now grown older and hopefully wiser.
Shall we?
You asked while your arm wrapped around his. Shinsou said nothing, only smiling at you before he took the lead inside the brightly lit auditorium, sprinkled with fairy lights. After taking your seats and enjoying the night's festivities, the both of you soon caught up with your former classmates, holding conversation and learning more on the gossip. You smiled at the sight of Bakugo and his now fiancée, recalling that weekend away bumping into the both of them there and chuckling wryly at the awkwardness at the time. You soon noticed Shinsou approach Bakugo and converse with him from afar, watching the irate blonde pull faces at him, most probably after a mild insult. You shook your head at how the two of them would still butt heads with one another, until you felt something different in the air. Out of all the surface thoughts you could hear, you suddenly gained access to the conversation between Shinsou and Bakugo, staring off at nothing while you sat at your table amongst the rest of its residents, still chatting away. It was difficult to ignore while you intently listened.
What about it, eyebags?
Spoke Bakugo while he took a sip of punch.
Congratulations.
Simply replied Shinsou, opening his hand out to the blonde. Bakugo stared at him with a furrowed brow. However, he took his hand, shaking it firmly.
It was nothing.
So, how do you feel?
What do you mean?
Was the frustration worth it in the end? You were pretty mad on that lunch date, reminded Shinsou with a smirk.
That's because people like you and your weak-ass partner were getting in my way the whole time we were there,
complained Bakugo. You cringed at his comment. Bakugo was Bakugo, even though he had softened his edges over the years. Still, it didn't help his rude undertones every once in a while.
Hey, firstly, they're not weak. And secondly, you just had the worst case of bad luck.
Explained Shinsou with a slight harsh edge to his voice. Bakugo scoffed before downing the last of his punch, eyeing the crowd of guffawing alumni until they laid on his fiancée, not too far away, laughing and chiding away with his friends at their table. Shinsou caught that look on his face, that cocky smirk obvious to see.
You worry too much sometimes,
he uttered nonchalantly.
What was that?
Snapped Bakugo.
You want to make a grandiose gesture, and I bet you had to slow down when it all went down, right?
Bakugo sneered at Shinsou's question, almost turning his lips into a pout which caught Shinsou's eye again.
So, you did take my advice. Shut it, eye bags.
Snapped Bakugo once more, earning a chuckle from the sleep-deprived man while he enjoyed his cup of punch.
You say one more goddamn word. Your secret is safe with me.
Interrupted Shinsou.
No one needs to know. And besides, nobody would believe that you and I enjoyed that lunch date together anyway.
The sound of Bakugo's scoff echoed in your mind again, realizing that you had finally discovered, at least to some degree, what Shinsou was insinuating back at Polis Massa Bay. The mere idea that Bakugo had the patience to go through, let alone listen to, Shinsou's advice was astonishing. Perhaps there was a mutual respect between the two over the years since their first encounter back at UA. You felt proud, swelling almost inside with content that Shinsou grew to become sociable, in his own way. However, your eyes turned towards the duo across the hall, spotting Shinsou's eye now on you, sipping his punch from the cup he held. Your shoulders stiffened at his gaze, turning your eyes away from him in slight embarrassment. No one had noticed your reactions at the table as of yet. However, Shinsou's words in your head echoed loudly.
Enjoyed the show?
He asked in your head, feeling it lower between your shoulders, unsure how to react, until a hand calmly rested on your back. You turned up to find Shinsou now by your side with a smirk on his face, as if he could feel every fiber in your being burn with mortification over your impromptu eavesdropping. The next thing you knew, he took you by the hand, leading you from the table and walking with you around the auditorium, circling the dance floor filled with already jovial fellow alumni.
We never did dance at our graduation, didn't we?
Asked Shinsou, taking your mind from the earlier teasing nature he threw at you so suddenly.
No, I think we both agreed to stay out of it.
You answered, reminiscing the year graduation was underway, filled with already drunken students enjoying the night from years of tutelage. Shinsou hummed and thought while he clutched onto your arm, your hand in his, until the song slowly turned into a slower tempo, watching the swarm of alumni shift on the floor and the couples taking stage. Still standing outside the ring of the dance floor, Shinsou turned to face you, guiding your hand onto his shoulder while he held onto you, soon swaying on the spot, irregardless of whoever was watching.
Hitoshi, we should be on the dance floor.
You spoke in your head, staring up into his tired yet smiling eyes.
It doesn't matter. We can dance wherever we want.
He replied back in your mind, his lopsided smile turning into a small grin. The both of you shared this moment together, swaying to and fro outside of everybody else to the tune of your own beat, and in each other's company. You melted into Shinsou, while you listened to the beat of his heart in his chest, slow and calm. Shinsou only wrapped you in his arms, content to have you, and yet pondered further on many things. After conversing with Bakugo over the course of his life decisions, at least unexpectedly, Shinsou thought more on the topic at hand. It felt just right for him to make plans. And he hoped you weren't eavesdropping this time, while his hands trailed up your back, holding you to him. The sound of your breath heaved violently in your lungs while you rushed through the streets, every so often weaving past passers-by with ease. Some of the time,
Hey, watch it!
Oops, sorry!
you called back with a twirl, adjusting a piece of your outfit while still in motion. Crossing the street yielded catastrophic results, at least for some of the drivers who blared their horns at your seeming obliviousness. You grinned happily at your anticipation, the excitement brewing in your gut when you spotted the tall white gates ahead, belonging to the most prestigious hero academy in all of Musatafu. To step foot through those gates felt like a privilege in itself. Otherwise, it was just general hype over the years, staring off into the distance from your school grounds years ago. Why must you be such a fanatic? No wonder people saw you differently, you thought, shrugging it away until you approached the tall gates, handing your pass for this reunion that most probably was about to proceed with its orientation speech. You bit your lip nervously. After being allowed onto the premises, a little dread crept in your mind that you were going to miss the reason why you were invited. Your boss, Tenya Iida, was about to make the honorary welcoming speech. And you were fashionably late. Now fully dressed, despite being a little rough around the edges from your rush through the city from Iidaten's agency, you ran with large strides towards Gym Gamma, thankful that you had quickly asked the security guards by the gates the general direction towards the auditorium. You ignored the confused looks of students who were leaving the premises, heaving heavily again until you spotted the fairy lights that decorated the paths. You chuckled brightly, rekindling some hope that maybe you made it just in time. Perhaps they stalled for a moment, like how cinemas ran advertisements before the commencement of the movie. Maybe they were still mingling about, something you can easily just slip into without anyone knowing the wiser. There were many ways this would end, but surely, once you reached the open doors of the auditorium, you rounded the corner abruptly.
And safe!
You yelled, suddenly catching wind of the echo of your voice that blasted in the very silent auditorium. The awkwardness felt so thick that you could potentially slice it with a knife, finding that all eyes were on you by the doors. You slowly peeked into the large room, your eyes immediately drawn towards the podium set up for the night, where the two MCs stood. One a voluptuous dark-haired beauty with hair you wish was your own, and the other, your boss, mouth slightly agape while he eyeballed you through his glasses. You cringed at the scene before you cleared your throat, lightly waving at everybody inside before you slowly walked away from the doors, turning to hide from prying eyes. You couldn't help a groan escape from your throat, head heavy, wondering if that was the exhaustion catching up to you from your rush to get here, or the embarrassment of possibly interrupting the party. Still, you overheard the MCs continue on with their speech, listening into their anecdotes over the course of their school years. It was pleasant to imagine how they colored their experiences while you leaned against the wall, smiling, listening intently to Iida's regimental tone. Eventually, the rising volume of voices and chatter was your cue to enter into the auditorium, less rowdy and out of breath than you were earlier. Your eyes darted around in search for Iida, but quickly found your way towards the flurry of tables when a green-haired gentleman called you over, quickly realizing it was the number one hero, Deku. Your heart skipped inside your ribcage, but you attempted to keep a cool facade, welcomed by the table of heroes while they led you to your seat right next to Iida's, which was empty.
Glad you could make it.
Welcomed the number one.
We've heard a lot of things about you.
Oh, good things, I hope?
You questioned nervously.
Well, I figured your grand entrance was the cherry on top.
Huh.
That nervousness grew tenfold upon hearing that from the number one. It only set your mind to wonder what exactly Iida had said about you to others, let alone, and most probably, to all his close friends and classmates. The churn in your stomach was blatantly difficult to ignore, clutching onto it while you nervously laughed further.
Sorry, I just ran from work to get here. Haven't had a bite to eat since breakfast this morning.
Suddenly, as if by some miracle, a plate appeared in front of you, served with tonight's dinner, now lukewarm. The sound of the chair beside you pulled from the table caught your ear, until you felt the presence of a large figure sit by your side, his arms crossed in mild frustration. You knew that judgmental energy anywhere.
Thanks, Tenya.
You slowly spoke, eyeing the tall man while he righted his glasses upon the bridge of his nose.
You're late.
He spoke dryly.
Fashionably.
Don't start.
But I was on a roll.
You explained with a whine.
I was on the precipice of completing stage 2.
Didn't you call them phases?
Close enough.
No, it isn't. You need to be consistent. Is everything alright?
Asked Todoroki, eyeing the both of you next to Midoriya.
Everything's fine.
Clarified Iida, clearing his throat in an attempt to redirect the conversation.
Sorry, I just get excited when I talk about Big Blue.
You admitted before you dug into your plate of food.
Big Blue?
Continued Todoroki, still with an aloof expression despite the question.
Yeah. She's my baby.
You simply replied between gulps of food.
You named your daughter Big Blue?
Todoroki, I think that's not exactly what they're talking about.
Clarified Midoriya.
No, Big Blue is one of their passion projects back in Edaton's research and development.
Explained Iida with a sigh, eyeing you still gorging on the dinner plate.
It's meant to be used in an emergency, once they've completed the build and preliminary tests.
It's officially called Belligerent Backup, or BB for short.
You emphasized while still trying to be in conversation.
But I like Big Blue better.
Iida pinched the bridge of his nose, exhausted from your high levels of energy and excitement. Aside from the few coffee trips he made to R&D, he hadn't heard much from you coming up to this reunion. Cooped up in the workshops at the agency to even take notice of the day and time. He felt lucky that he rescued a plate for you when you surely arrived, seeing as you never made it earlier this evening before doors opened into Gym Gamma.
You're really passionate about this, huh?
Asked Yaoyoruzu from across the way, recognizing that she was the one that stood next to Iida on stage.
It's not the act of creating the invention, it's the process and journey along the way that really excites me.
You admitted.
Like the one time when I had to test for Tenya's breathing performance, which required having to create a mold of his—
Okay, that's enough.
Interrupted Iida, causing a small pout to form on your lips before you finished the rest of your meal. Despite being close to age, Iida still held rank above you. Of course, being the brother of Tensei Iida, the man behind the formation of the agency, was a good reason why. But that didn't stop Iida's tendency to check on your health every chance he had. The thought of it brought a smile on your face. Soon the party was underway. You watched the crowd mingle and dance together on the dance floor, spotting many congregate around some key players. Iida made the rounds with you, only for you to trap Cellophane in conversation after he discussed his recent happenstances with a certain thief on his patrols as of late. The thought of upgrading his gear was tantalizing.
Seriously, you need the latest tech to help you out, and I know just the thing.
You quipped excitedly.
Really?
Asked Sero, curious of your suggestion.
That, my friend, would be me.
You piped, with thumbs pointing at you.
This thief of yours won't have a chance against any tech I make.
You're sounding a lot like Hatsume.
Wait, you know her?
We all do. She made most of our tech back when we were students.
Slack-jawed from the epiphany, you turned to Iida next to you, your expression hurt and betrayed.
You didn't tell me this!
You shouted, throwing a finger at Iida.
I thought it wasn't relevant.
He replied dryly.
I need to know these things. How else do I know who I'm up against previously?
It's none of your concern.
Anyway, it'd be great if you swung by, Iida-ten.
You suggested while turning to Sero with a smile.
I can solve your dilemma, or at least give you an upper hand.
With a flick of your wrist, you handed Sero a business card, complete with your details and the Iida-ten insignia emblazoned on its stock.
Thanks.
Mused Sero while he took the card from your hand, spotting his eye towards the dance floor.
It was nice meeting you, but I gotta save a friend. Sorry.
Give me a call!
You shouted after, watching the tape hero make his way towards the floor, noticing his intention to help Charge Bolt, who draped over his +1. Your eyes drifted around, feeling the heaviness of sleep weigh on your mind before you decided to recite to yourself what you observed. Earphone Jack, the muso who headed the night's entertainment along with her hero career, enjoyed a night along with her classmates. Gravity, the caring gravity hero who had been rising in rank as of late, conversing with Deku. Tsukuyomi, the dark hero enjoying the night while chaperoning a friend of his by the looks of it. And then,
What's the progress on BB?
asked Iida next to you. Your eyes peeked at his voice, spotting his tall frame now with a serious look.
Oh? She's coming along.
You started.
As you know, Phase 1 was a success. But by my calibrations, she needs to have more injection in her acceleration capacitors. Phase 2 should be complete in the next couple of days, give or take, depending on how her balance and suspension perform.
They're phases now?
Questioned Iida with a quirked brow.
They've always been phases.
You beamed with a smile, earning an exasperated sigh from Iida.
Although, it would be wise that we test it on the field. I need to know exactly how it would function in a live scenario. Dummies would be ineffective in seeing how it would perform.
Iida spotted the serious look on your face, your mind mulling over the quandaries in your head.
How about you test it with me?
He suggested.
What? No!
You cried with an outburst.
It's meant to be a surprise!
Having anyone else in our agency as volunteers to your projects is unwise.
Explained Iida.
At least I'm aware of BB's project.
Yeah, but that would destroy any usable data on its effectiveness.
Call it a control group. You need to understand how BB works with someone who knows the weapon before improving its capabilities for someone who doesn't. What fun would there be if you don't continue mastering and finessing?
You eyed Iida, watching his calm smile on his lips. You couldn't disagree when he was being agreeable.
Fine, I concede.
You spoke dryly.
Would you be available by the end of this week for an hour session?
It's a date.
He replied, squeezing your shoulder tenderly, before he opened his arm to you, inviting you to join him while you stared at his invitation.
Want to meet more of my friends?
He asked smoothly while you took his arm in yours, standing next to the tall man with a grin.
Why, I do declare, Mr. Iida, you are too kind.
You jested with a humorous accent.
Please don't speak like that when I introduce you.
You only beamed at the man with a toothy smile before being chaperoned throughout the reunion, meeting a very drunk chargebot hanging off from his +1 still, a demure Shoto with his infamous sidekick partner, and bypassing Ground Zero without a hello. And probably for the better. After knowing Iida for years back at the agency, he had opened up a part of his world to you, happy to introduce you to the eyes of Pro Hero Society, a little later than ever. Thank you for tuning in to another fanfiction reading. If you enjoy what I do or would prefer to just fall asleep to my voice, please hit that like button, ring that bell, and subscribe to my channel. Every little bit counts, and I am very appreciative to all of you listeners out there. But travelers, yes, this is the second edition to Prom Night Lights, and it took a while for me to write this one up, but I believe after a bit more of character development had happened with a couple of the characters in this edition, it's kind of jogs, I guess, it's kind of started up my motivation to finish this. I do hope maybe there might be another edition to Prom Night Lights. If you would like another one, please like this video, and I will see if I can write a third edition. Although it comes to question who the third editions would be, I do have a few in mind. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much for visiting. I hope to hear from you soon, next we meet.